on their shoulders.
Well, anyway, it was unusual to me because I used to deal with this a lot before I retired, and I saw this new drawing around the village down here. So
that sounds like a good plan.
It used to come up in the parking lot,
contrarian.
but it won't work here. Anyway.
Well, the only problem with that is we don't know for sure what they're going to actually be able to do with the developed site up there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know for sure it's not contaminated?
Which one?
The industrial areas.
Well, I think
Whirlpool used to
there are likely to be portions, I would imagine,
That would be.
given what they've done, over 50, 60, 70 years there. You did see that part of the site was under demolition the other day. That was in the paper that some demolition, Whirlpool had started demolition of some of the older buildings there.
Well, I saw another article in the Banner the other day that showed the old Permacolor building downtown being renovated into apartments and so forth.
The local developer has asked to participate in I don't remember if it's a federal or state grant project that would provide some tax incentives to do that. And I think he was looking at some upstairs lofts and some retail space in the bottom.
President Trump has really touted those enterprise zones and blighted areas. I don't think we probably qualify as a blighted area, but I know that a lot of the minority communities in some of the bigger cities have benefited from those types of grant programs and tax incentives.
Well, Chattanooga right now, I mean, they've redeveloped all the south side down there. It's amazing what I was going on.
Well, the sad part for me is the hardwood woolen mills. If you moved that into like downtown Chattanooga, or certainly if you had it somewhere in New York, those would be some of the most expensive loft-type apartments in the world with the high ceilings and the old beams.
Well, we probably ought to save that building for the New Yorkers and all the Yankees when they come in down here to move in with us.
That's actually true. When they retire, they can't afford those taxes anymore, and they come down here. The problem is they vote for higher taxes when they come down here.
Go ahead, Franklin.
Well, I think the development that they're talking about there may include saving the building.
I know. The only reason I say that is that's been pretty noticeable for a couple of decades now that people have tried to do that, and it just hadn't been able to take off, it doesn't seem. But it's a beautiful building.
Well, we are. A lot of people probably aren't aware, but there's a fair number of upstairs apartments in downtown Cleveland now.
Upstairs apartments?
Yeah, there's several of them in several buildings down there. And I think that you're starting to get more people who are interested in living down there.
Well, where Haskell Interiors is, and I don't know what the status of that upstairs is, but I've been in it, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The whole, it actually rings the outside of the building. The inside is open, so you actually have windows on the inside of that. And those apartments have 12-foot ceilings up there. As I remember it, there were some fireplaces up there. And used to be, there were stairs that went up to the deck, or to the roof. Mm-hmm. And so they were actually really nice apartments up there.
There's several that are kind of hidden down there that you don't realize are there, but they actually are.
Well, people come and people go, so we'll see what happens. It'll all happen. It'll all get developed down there at some point in time, and then we'll be trying to figure out what to do next, right, John?
It'll get developed when it's financially feasible to develop it.
Well, when they start getting the tax breaks and so forth, maybe.
Well, tax breaks are, that's one of the arguments between conservative and liberal, is the liberals a lot of times want to take tax dollars and spend it. Conservatives want to say, look, make it financially feasible. Cut their taxes.
Right.
Now, that's exactly what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez complained about with the Amazon deal in New York City. They weren't giving, I'm not sure she actually even understood what was going on. They weren't actually giving Amazon any money. They were allowing them to keep more of their own money. They were deferring their taxes in order to get the investment. Mm-hmm. And in railing about that, she ran it off. But I think that's the way to do this. People look at those buildings. I can tell you, people go to Florida, for example, and they go, you know what? I go down here every year and I rent a house. If I could rent that house, X number of weeks out of the year, I could just buy it. And I could buy it and I could own it, and then I could go down there a week or two on my own, but I would rent it to everybody else and maybe even make a little money on it. Well, then when you figure out the taxes on it, it's not feasible to do.
Right.
So taxes can be used in the positive by cutting them, by, pushing them aside. But then we get the social justice warriors that start complaining we're giving breaks to, horrible rich people.
Let me ask this. This was something that caught my attention. A Kentucky student claims in a lawsuit that the local health department violated his freedom of religion by banning him from school for 3 weeks because he was unvaccinated. The school is battling a chickenpox outbreak and took extra precautions to get it under control.
I'd say kick him out permanently.
Franklin, any opinion there?
Well, I'm strongly opposed to the anti-vaxxer movement. I don't know if this person is part of that or not. The only thing that sticks out about that is him talking about religious views. And so that makes it a little bit different if that's the case. For example, you have Christian Scientists who don't believe in surgery, for example, that sort of thing. And we've had this debate in here once before where the state wanted to do a surgery on a child to save his life, and his parents opposed it on religious grounds.
Right, but here's the difference. That's a...
But it only involves that child. That's right, and I think that's the issue.
I should have read it. National Review had an article stating that it would be constitutional to require the vaccines. Mm-hmm. But the thing we've kind of lost sight of is someone like him says, look, I have a right not to do this. You do. But you don't have a right to do it and be protected from the consequences of that. And so if you choose to do that and the state decides that there's a public safety interest in keeping you out of school, that's the price you pay for your freedom. These things aren't free. Freedom costs.
Smallpox is something that was gone and now starting to come back.
Look, we've got tetanus coming back.
Yeah.
We've got.
Why do you think these are coming back?
Well, tetanus is
because if you reach a certain level of vaccination in a community, that provides protection for everybody.
Right.
There are always a few people out there who can't be vaccinated or a few people who didn't, but everybody's protected because so many people have it's called herd immunity. All right. That's the very idea behind it. Once you fall below that certain level, though, everybody comes at risk. Even people who've been vaccinated a long time ago don't have the same immunity that they used to have. But because there's so little of it around, they're doing okay. Well, you're getting these pockets now of places where they have a lot of anti-vaxxers who believe something they read on the internet.
That would be progressive leftist pockets.
Some are and some are not.
Now don't get
some of them are strongly libertarians.
Let's not get yelling here.
Some of them are strongly libertarians.
The bulk of this movement is from the left. And what's funny about that, it's the same people that when I say I don't think man is actually the sole driver or main driver of global warming, I'm anti-science. But these same people won't vaccinate their children. What's sad about this is Rotary Club has worked for decades to try and stamp out polio. And we are literally down, and it kind of bounces. We've been down to one country, I believe, at one point, but usually we're at 2 to 3 countries. And we go in and we give them the vaccines. And the main problem we have with getting through in a lot of these areas is governments like the Taliban. So if these anti-vaxxers want to see a good example of how that works, then they're kind of in the same vein as radical religious groups. And so, tetanus, there's a 4-year-old child with tetanus now. Tetanus is an absolutely horrible disease. Yeah. And so this mom, because of her political, and it's a quasi-political type belief, has this child suffering and probably permanently, if he survives, damaged. And the funny thing about this is this came from a British scientist, and he wrote a book about it, and it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago now that they found out he falsified his data. So all of this came from a false study.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was kind of the lone voice out there in the first place.
They've just released, in fact, just about 10 days ago, they released another big study from the Netherlands over a 10-year period, and they compared people who had not vaccinated their kids with ones who had, and we're talking about 300,000 kids studied here. There was zero difference in the number of autism diagnoses.
Well, the thing is, we have no idea what causes autism. We don't know. And that's what makes it a perfect...
Is autism something that's always been around?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Actually, there's some...
Probably
There's not
diagnosed
something new
Well,
that's
here's the
happening.
thing. There's a spectrum. They'll talk about that.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum of autism. There are some incredibly famous, brilliant people in our history that were most likely autistic.
Yeah.
Because it actually brings out certain things. And, you know, the people our age, I guess, know the Tom Cruise Rain Man thing. Obviously, that was fictional, but it's true. They have certain things that their brain actually excels at doing. And so on the spectrum, you can have someone that, for all practical purposes, seems relatively normal and is able to be, you know, tremendously successful with it. Now, you know, there's severe end of the spectrum that is very debilitating.
Let me get back to a local event real quick, just to get some opinions. The commissioners are revisiting a Tenova tax refund. This Tenova tax refund caught us where there's a lot of money owed. Does anybody understand that very much?
Sure. Every is it 6 years or so, the county does a reassessment of every property in the county.
Right.
To determine what the value of that property is, and that sets what your tax is on that property. They went through that appraisal. The assessor came up with one number using whatever methodology he uses. And like any other resident, Tenova appealed that. And eventually it got up to the state board of assessors and so forth, and they agreed with Tenova and lowered their rate. And consequently, you know, that's money that they're owed back.
What the state board? How does
Well,
the
that's the
state?
appeal. There's a local board, and then it goes up higher after that.
So, I'm sure there's a formula that was used to come up with.
Well, there
this.
is, but if you think about it, and there's
How
not a
can
lot.
you?
There's not.
What
a lot
I guess I'm getting at is how can they physically overcharge for them?
Because it's sort of a subjective thing.
If you think about it, there's not a lot of comparables in the community for a hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're trying to evaluate the value of the improvements to the property, but as what? Is it? It's not comparable to a corporate headquarters. It's not comparable to a retail development. It's sort of like on its own. They own the only other healthcare facility in the community, the same people. So how do you determine what the value of that is? And so there's a methodology they use, but in this particular case, it produced a higher number that they disputed, and they happened to win on this one.
And the reason they go to the state is, like all of these things, we talk about due process. If you're accused of a crime, you have due process to make sure you're treated fairly. This kind of thing, they have process to make sure people are treated fairly.
People do it all the time, though. People do these appeals on their homes.
The problem is it's just not a multi-million-dollar mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, typically it's a $500 or $600 change in somebody's taxes.
What do you think's going on with the liquor store vote deal? What's I mean,
What
they
do you
seem
mean?
to be stretching this thing out on making selections. I mean, you make an application.
John, although we approach it from different directions, John has raised some points about them not being good for a community, and you saw the city council using that as a justification to potentially deny some of those.
After they said absolutely nothing before the vote. So the public was allowed to make an uninformed decision, and now they're trying to balance the actuality of that.
Well, in other
I
words,
mean, here's the thing. All these people that said, oh, it's no big deal, would you want it in your neighborhood? You want a liquor store right across the street?
be handy, wouldn't it?
Well, I guess it would.
Well, do you think, Franklin? Should we let a liquor store in our neighborhood?
In our neighborhood, it'd be pretty busy.
You're going to be popular.
Most of my neighbors would laugh at that. Maybe one or two hold out. Most of them would laugh.
Oh, Lord. Let me ask you about the college admission scam. What do you think, Franklin?
I'm just shaking my head at that one. I mean, on several levels. I don't care where you come down on it. I'll guarantee you a lot of those people had publicly complained about things like affirmative action and stuff like that. And now they were trying to rig a system that way for their own kids.
Actually, I think you're completely wrong, because most of those people are big liberals, and they've actually bragged on affirmative action, been supportive of affirmative. William H. Macy has been really, really ugly about the president, and one of the things he said is, it's the president's character. Well, somehow, William H. Macy, paying someone to take your child's SAT test doesn't sound exactly like positive moral character.
Well, it's interesting that he didn't actually get arrested.
His wife did.
Yeah, so I don't...
these are your people out there that have supported all kinds of social justice crap, while they have a completely different set of rules for their kids.
And none of those big-time hedge managers whose kids also got caught up in were Republicans or
most of those
conservatives.
guys, actually, Barack Obama and Hillary both got more money from Wall Street than the Republican candidates did. So those are your people too.
None of those people were conservative Republicans.
Those are your people too.
Because conservative Republicans would have never done such.
Here's something that ought to be talked about more, though.
Go ahead.
Tucker Carlson talked about this last night. These colleges have made billions of dollars off the taxpayer, and there's absolutely zero recourse on them. So they have built fancier and fancier campuses. They have expanded. Before, if you wanted to be an engineer, you went to Tennessee Tech, or if you could get in, you went to Georgia Tech. Well, now every college in the state has an engineering department and an architecture department and everything, because they've got all this influx of government money. And so if a kid goes through and he comes out with I think the average is $40,000 or $50,000 in student debt, and he can't get a job, there's no blowback on a college. Hey, you educated this kid in women's studies and they can't get a degree, or can't get a job in women's studies. What's the downside for the college? Nothing. There's no downside for the college.
Interestingly enough, since you brought that up, I noticed that I looked this up while we're there. Lori Laughlin's husband was a huge donor to both Mitt Romney and John Boehner. So it must have been a mixed marriage.
Well, actually, the Laughlins probably are conservative, if I had to bet. But, their daughter, for example, posted last year that she only wanted to go to college for the parties.
Well, that's what most of them at that age do.
Well, here's what's really bad. If you think about this, Laughlin and her husband, neither one of them have a college education. And supposedly part of this was they wanted to make sure their children had something they didn't have. They spent $500,000. Why didn't you start in junior high and spend $500,000 on tutors and extra, training? Why didn't you do that?
Yeah, that is planning. That's planning, isn't it?
Where's the beef?
But there should be some blowback on these colleges too, though.
Well, John, you and I, everyone knows, Franklin, you know too, that these colleges are following the money.
But my point is there's too much money going to them. They've raised tuition.
Right.
The Baylor University, the president of Baylor University makes over $5 million a year.
You're right, John. They are, and it's too easy to get. The money is too easy to get.
The government has no strings to it. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of these kids don't even graduate, but the college got the money. They went, they got a bunch of money that the government gave them. The kid's on the hook for it. And the bad part is, eventually, now that the government has nationalized all of that debt, we're going to be on the hook.
Let me ask something I don't understand. The student loan program was set up originally to help support tuition and books.
Right.
That was it. But now they get the money, they can pay their rent, they can buy their food.
Well, if you ask me, the big problem with it has been that we opened up the number of institutions that could get the benefits. And so we ended up with these for-profit, private online schools and so forth, and you had a lot of people take advantage of those. You had probably some good people in there who did that, but you also had some charlatans who
All right,
took
let me
took advantage
agree
of
and disagree. They are probably the most egregious examples, but they are probably a drop in the bucket compared to the big universities. So as far as the actual dollars going to them, these big universities, Harvard, for example, I don't even know what it is. Their endowment is something like hundreds
over
of
$200 billion.
Yeah, dollars.
All right.
Why are we giving them anything?
Right.
They got enough money to do whatever they want. And guess what would happen if they weren't getting any money? If you go to Harvard and you're going to spend probably $200,000 plus to get a 4-year degree from them. If you had to dole that much, the tuition's $50,000 a year or more.
It's more than that. It's what that was.
Well,
I was thinking you were being conservative.
I was being conservative. At least a couple $100,000 for a degree. If you went and you spent your own money at that, and you got out and you couldn't get a job because you had a Russian literature degree, you wouldn't send your kids back to Harvard. Other people would go, I'm not paying that much for a degree, my kid to come out with something he can't do anything with.
There's actually some really good analysis and studies that shows that you're, in general, better off being a big fish in a small pond in school in terms of your employability than being in the middle of the pack in one of these Cadillac schools. Now, if you're at the top of those schools, you're going to do just great. But if you're down in the middle with the masses, you're not going to do probably as well as if you went to a lesser school and excelled there.
Well, one of
It's
the
better
things
to be
too,
at the top of UT than be in the bottom third at Harvard.
There's another thing too. There was a debate last night I listened to, and one of the guys said, well, if you get a college degree, you're more likely, you're going to earn more money, you're going to, do all this better stuff. The second guy came on and said, you're missing the point. Those people that you're looking at are going to do better no matter what. It's not the college degree that made them do better, because there's tons of people that go through, get a college degree, and don't do better. The people that are going to do better because they're driven, they're, aggressive, that kind of thing. The college degree doesn't really make them.
We'll get back to these parents that are paying bribes and doing things to get their kids in school. What are they teaching the kids?
Well, that's the point.
I mean, they're lying.
Well, here's the
stealing,
thing. The Laughlins spent apparently $500,000. Basically, I think they paid some bribes. I think they got scholarships. Now, the bad part about that is they took a scholarship away from someone else.
Sure.
But the William H. Macy and Felicity Huffman, they paid someone to take the test for their child.
Yeah.
The SAT.
I mean, that's just guilty. That's almost a crime. It is a crime. Yeah.
It is a crime.
I mean,
I think the guy was like a Harvard grad or something like that was taking
I
this
loved
test.
it that they,
but wait a minute.
played.
There's a whole other wrinkle to this too. The guy that was running all of this set up a charity, so they were able to write off the money they paid, illegally paid, to get their child in college. He gave them a tax deduction for it.
That tell you the laws are a little strange there.
Sometimes they are.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back in a minute and do the second half.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
I told that little boy, don't let that big bully do you like that. Just catch him in the lunchroom and just go up and jab smack him 3 or 4 times and then run across the hallway and go into the office. He ain't gonna come in there bullying you, but don't let him bully you like that, son. Jab smack him.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center, or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
Dr. Christopher Chase, with associates in plastic surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also, tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. That's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Key Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right. Every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors, from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners, to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee. 400-5376.
We're here at the Train Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
Inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Train AC unit. Clearly, it's hard to stop the train.
Ready for a heating and air unit that's been tested in the harshest environments possible? Stop thinking about the other guys and get a Train. Call Mechanical Systems today to get your home on the road to comfort. 336-5739.
Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Woo FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Do some work for them.
Yeah. Well,
I'm told we're back in live. So
I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that one of the highest placement rates for colleges was William and Mary. Washington and Lee. Washington and Lee had one of the highest placements.
Well, what do you think UT is?
It wasn't the highest.
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, Steve. Good morning. How's it going, bud?
Hey, good morning. How about you?
I'm pretty good. I was talking about this on the Android Hour Monday night. I'm kind of upset about it a little bit. I'm ready for they're going to try to take people's guns from them. Do you guys think they'll ever be able to take a person's guns if people that own the guns? You think?
Not if you keep voting the way you are. You'll be fine.
Who's going to try and take their guns from them?
Well, you've got Democrat presidential candidates that have said they want to.
Yeah.
Your party.
No, I'm asking you who you saw first.
Well, I'll give you an example. The New Zealand Prime Minister promises tighter gun laws. First
we ought to talk about that shooting, because that shooting has been labeled by the press, and it's part of what the caller's talking about. It's this gun control push, that he was labeled a right-wing zealot. He's not. He's a left-winger. Franklin, I'll read it to you.
Hey. Okay, thank you.
Let me read it to you, okay? Here's what he said. Washington Post said it's one of the worst cases of right-wing terrorism in years. So he was asked under the headline, "Where are you a supporter of Donald Trump?" And the shooter wrote, "As a policymaker and leader, dear God, no." Did this guy hate minorities? Yeah. But here's what he was said. Now this is a quote. "The environment is being destroyed by overpopulation. We Europeans are one of the groups that are not overpopulating the world. The invaders are the ones overpopulating the world. Kill the invaders, kill the overpopulation, and by doing so, save the environment." He's a radical environmentalist, is what he is, not a right-wing shooter. He also said that China was the country that he most aligned with politically and socially. He also, a European socialist, Oswald Mosley, is the guy he most admired as far as politicians. So he also said that he did it, now this is a quote, "to help achieve the removal of gun rights for New Zealanders and Americans." And within a day, New Zealand, politicians in both countries were calling for that. So Franklin, this guy was a liberal.
Actually, he said that he loved Trump's rhetoric, is what he said.
But he hated
he didn't
Trump.
think he was very sincere.
He hated Trump. He actually said China was the... All right, I'll tell you what, Franklin. Deal with the fact that he said he killed the invaders, killed the overpopulation, and by doing so, saved the environment. Is that not a direct link to his massacre?
It's certainly
For the
a part,
environment.
sure.
Have you heard that quote? No. Because the media doesn't want to tell you that quote.
Because I had read the whole thing.
And by the way, New Zealand has only 6.5% out of 3.81 million adults have licenses to own guns. They have one of the strictest gun control laws in the world already. And yet he was able to get a gun and shoot people, which is exactly what we've said. It's not the gun, it's the person.
Yes.
Well, you got Connecticut up here has just authorized a lawsuit against Remington Arms because of Adam Lanza, who did the Sandy Hook shit. And basically, we can't pass what we want politically on gun control. So now we're going to use the liability courts to try and put businesses out of business, is what they've done.
So we're suing them over what?
Yeah.
All right. It gets kind of convoluted. Adam Lanza did the killing, but he's dead.
What they said was that Remington had advertised
Hold on,
uses, and I don't want. I'd be quoting it incorrectly, but something along the lines of their advertisements promoted violent uses of the gun.
That's not true.
That's basically that is what the lawsuit.
They said that it was a cousin. It was a cousin to the standard issue U.S. military rifle, which it is. That's just a fact. But it's also the most popular sold gun for hunting, sporting, and self-defense in the entire country. So basically what they've said is, we don't agree with your political position, and so now we're going to... And by the way, Remington didn't even own the company. The company's actually changed hands. They went into bankruptcy, and a bunch of... I think J.P. Morgan and one of the other banks ended up with them. So they're actually suing the financiers behind the company. And all this is a blatant attempt to try and put gun business out of business by using the courts.
backing up for just a moment, because I want to clear up a little bit of this. This New Zealand shooter, what he said, and it's a quote out of it, was that he considered Trump, quote, a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose.
What does that mean?
Yeah, he did say that.
What does that
And he
what does
also
that mean?
and he also decried the decaying culture of the white European.
Tell me what all that means.
Well, I guess in the eye of the beholder, but a lot of people would take that as white supremacist in nature.
Frankly, you know,
I mean,
David Duke just last week supported your Muslim congresswomen who were anti-Semitics. Did the press and did you label, are they now tied to the Ku Klux Klan because some crazy supports them? The guys are crazy. Yes, he said that about Trump, but then he also went on and said what I read to you, that the problem was the overpopulation and that he was going to kill the overpopulation and save the environment.
John, to answer your question, yes. That Muslim congresswoman was condemned for the words she used.
But not for the fact that David Duke, the Ku Klux Klan, supported her. He came out and defended her, Franklin.
And Donald Trump's being condemned for the words he uses.
But that's not what you're doing here. You're connecting him to this mass shooter because the mass shooter said, I like some of the things he says. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you that you didn't do the same to Lee because...
Actually, we did.
Not because David Duke supported
Yeah, but we still held her accountable for what she said.
No, you don't. Tell me how she's accountable. You couldn't even pass a resolution saying anti-Semitism was bad, Franklin.
I think she's pretty roundly criticized.
No, she's not.
Yeah, she was.
Franklin, you started out with a simple anti-Semitism, I can't even say it, is bad. And before you got done, you had people that don't like Oscar the Grouch in it is bad. It had everything in the world in it because you couldn't single her out.
It'd be just like your party to gang up on Oscar.
Let's see. Let's talk about, we still have a caller to see. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, I'm here. I want to mention something about two different things.
All right, go ahead.
When Tanoga had their appraiser down there, because it was can you get a copy of how the appraisal came up with that appraisal that was working for Tanoga, or is that
Well, it's public record, so I would imagine so.
Why don't you go down there and get that, and we'll and call us back, and we'll talk about it.
Well, you tell me how to do it, and I'll try it.
Go down to the tax sister's
I
office.
think you would make what's called a FOIA request. That's a form you fill out. And
say that again?
Freedom of Information Act request with the county government.
Who do I give that to?
Probably the county executive's office is how you start that typically.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Number two, I called the election commission because generally if somebody gets elected, you can get so many signers and have a reload. So I went down, I voted no on this liquor referendum, and I called down there, and there's no recall. Once it's done, it's done. There's no recall on it whatsoever, and I was shocked about that.
Well, once it's done, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what I found out. But if you have somebody elected as a person,
well,
that's because they have a limited term.
The recall laws, they're different in every state, and most of them apply to an elected official. However, I would assume that on these referendums, you could have another referendum to disallow liquor stores, but it would have to go through.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a recall. I think you probably could change the law, but you'd have to do it that way.
In other words, it'd be during the next election, though.
Well, first you'd have to meet the minimum guidelines for getting it on the ballot.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to get all that done. So it's not a recall. There probably is a process, but it's just not the one you're thinking of there.
Less than 50% of the people vote in the city of Cleveland.
Well, that's true in almost every election we have.
Hey, I bet you we don't have 25% of the people vote, do we?
We've had votes. Major elections where it was actually down below 20%.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it was 40-something% this time. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, where were we? I forgot what I was about to read now. Let me ask you what you think is going to happen in Venezuela.
Well,
where do you think this is going to end up over there?
I think it's going to eventually end up, being the example for democratic socialism with Alexandria Cortez and Franklin, because it's the most current, most active form of socialist government going in the world right now. Well, I don't know. Maybe the oppressive Chinese regime might be a better one, but
Well, I mean, Venezuela, the people are starving there to death.
They've been starving for a couple of years.
I'm just saying,
Bernie Sanders, the leader in the polls on the Democrat side, would not call Nicolas Maduro a dictator. Now, this is a guy that shot people at his border running to pick up supplies from international aid organizations. But the leader of the Democrat pack right now couldn't bring himself to call the man a dictator.
What do you think the solution is going to be to this problem in Venezuela? What's going to happen? Any ideas of how this outcome?
The country's already collapsed. The military hopefully will eventually abandon him.
That's the question. It's whether the military continues to support Maduro or not.
Well,
which is a mainstay of socialist governments.
Anyway, Brazil, is it Brazil that's invited us to be able to have troops there? Mm-hmm. We've decided to try to help Venezuela. What do you think America should do to try to help Venezuela?
That's the big question.
We're sending help there, but they won't even let the food and things come into the country. There's something wrong with that. If you got people starving and you won't even let food come to the country, right? Am I right?
Sure.
Should we take military action to help them?
That's the big debate. And are you a interventionist? Is that your philosophy of government or not?
I think a more important thing is for people like Alexandria Cortez to be able to understand that a country with the 5th largest oil collection in the world, that was a major first world nation because of about 12 years of socialism, which she advocates and which is the future of the Democratic Party, is now living in utter ruin. People are starving to death. They're eating zoo animals. They're eating their cats and dogs. The inflation rate is over 1,000,000%.
But should America try to?
Yeah, John's completely avoiding what he's actually talking about.
I don't want to send troops in there. What we can do is we can increase sanctions, but the problem with the increased sanctions is the people are already suffering.
Yeah,
the people like Maduro, and it's always like this, the leaders of a socialist government don't suffer.
Well, let me ask you this. Franklin, this is going to blow your mind. Should we stop all illegal immigration into our country? And then let's open our doors to Venezuelans right now to try to help them.
Well, that's exactly what's happening from Guatemala. The vast majority of the illegal immigrants you're talking about are coming from Guatemala right now.
Guatemala's just a poor country.
Because of the conditions in that country.
But it's just a poor country. There are poor countries all over the world, Franklin. You're going to bring them all here?
I didn't say that.
But my point is that's not a comparison to Venezuela. What he's saying is the people in Venezuela are actually being openly oppressed and attacked by socialism.
There is no justification for one over the other in those two instances. Both those people's populations are suffering terribly.
Well, are the people in Somalia suffering terrible?
Well, I'm
not arguing for anything, John. I'm just saying you can't pick and choose that way.
Could we walk there and help them?
Should we what?
Could we go to where you're talking about?
You can't act. I know you're being hypothetical, but you can't actually do it because Maduro, as long as he's in power,
not in Venezuela, where you're talking about, where the poor are. We could go there and help them. They don't have to come here, right?
Well, you know what? That's exactly the argument. That's exactly the argument that's been made for a long time. Everybody got really upset. Big, huge scandal because a relatively tiny portion of our federal budget went to aid for different developing countries like this to help them.
How tiny?
Hold on.
How tiny?
Very small.
Well, I mean, like 10 billion, 20 billion?
It was something on the order of 20 billion.
20 billion. How much did he ask for a wall?
Hold
How much was the
on
wall?
a minute. All right. You're just changing the topic now.
I'm making a point here.
You know, but that's the point of that. That's the reason we were doing things like that, to try to avoid these issues and to try to help them develop an economy that will support their people. And that's a horrible thing. When you talk about going and sending the military down there, going to cost way more than that aid would have cost.
Well, do they need help or not?
Look,
I don't have a problem with trying to help them.
My point was, you said a small amount of money was $20 billion.
No, I
Trump
didn't say
only
that.
asked for $5 billion.
I didn't
for
say
his
that
wall.
that's a small amount of
Yes,
money.
you did. Yes, you did. We'll play the tape back.
Let me ask you something. I want to get back to the bottom of this. In Venezuela, Venezuela's got a great country. If we could just get in there and help them turn over from their leadership.
I don't want you to gloss over this point. The sole reason that it's a hellhole is socialism.
We know that. Franklin, you understand that too.
Actually, the sole reason it's a hellhole is because they have a dictator.
Franklin, they started out with socialism. As it destroyed the economy, the people became more and more unhappy with it, and so they had to become more and more
I'm not advocating for
dictatorial.
socialism, but you can at least get factually accurate. What happened is that the people down there were very happy as long as oil prices were really high. Because the government had plenty of cash to distribute around.
And then, under socialist principles, they nationalized. Franklin,
let him finish.
You can't pass this up. They nationalized the oil companies.
And as I said, they continued to elect those folks because the oil was producing lots of revenue for them. Okay? And when those prices collapsed, then...
Why did the prices collapse?
It was a worldwide collapse in prices.
Why didn't every other oil country go into chaos?
I'm not advocating for their system, John.
Yes,
Quit
you are.
insulting everybody.
You're defending
but
their
suggesting
system.
that. No, I'm not.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
not defending
You're dancing
anything.
all around the fact that socialism is the root cause. Socialism is the root cause of their problems. Root cause.
We know that. We know that socialism is
Being a murderous dictator apparently has nothing
The
to do with
socialism
what's
comes
going on.
first, and then they all become murderous dictators. So you're absolutely right about that, Franklin.
Anyway, they have a problem, right, Franklin? Do they have a problem in Venezuela? What can we do to help them?
You'll have to make a decision, Steve, whether you want to intervene militarily or not. That's the answer.
Well, no, wait a minute.
That is the answer
You
to the
can
question.
increase sanctions and hasten the collapse.
In other words, what he's saying is make the people suffer more until they get.
I don't disagree.
That's what you're saying.
What you're hoping is the military finally decides
Because that's worked so well in North Korea, right?
Well, Franklin,
their economy's been in tatters for 40 years.
and wait a minute, what kind of government have they had for 40 years? Oh, that's right, socialism.
A complete.
Which your party is now selling to the American people.
What's your personal opinions about socialism, Franklin?
First of all, nobody's advocating what John's talking about.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez
No,
is.
she's not. Number two, they're stupid for trying to use that label instead of talking about what they're really talking about.
Bernie Sanders says
Yes,
socialism.
Wait a minute, John. Let me get this straight. Who's they are stupid?
Those particular candidates that he's talking about are stupid to be using that kind of label.
Perfect. Now then, right now, who is your choice for president on the
I
Democratic
haven't
side?
made a decision yet.
Out of all that's there, who would be your first top pick?
There's probably three at this point that I'm interested in.
Which three?
I'm impressed by Kamala Harris. I'm impressed by Amy Klobuchar. I'm impressed by Cory Booker. I saw an interview of him the other night that was very impressive.
Spartacus.
Okay.
and I will say this. I think Biden has a legitimate chance, and the reason he has a chance is probably the same reason that Trump was elected, and that is people perceived that candidate as being sincere in the things that he was saying.
Biden, what happened to his other last two elections?
Well,
he's actually hadn't had a competitive Senate election since the 70s. He's relatively untested.
I know that Biden, interestingly enough, by all the reports, is the one that the Trump campaign folks are most concerned about.
Well, that's because Biden actually might not completely destroy the country. any of the others he mentioned
That's
will.
right. Apocalyptic.
Let
rhetoric. That's what we need.
me ask this while I've got you two guys together. The electoral vote versus the popular vote. What's going on there where first of all, the Democrats are wanting to change the voting age to 16.
They want to change everything. When they don't win,
They want to change the
rules.
Constitution. They want to change the Supreme Court.
Now, a 16-year-old is legitimate, according to the Democrats, to be able to elect the most powerful person in the world. But they're not young or old enough and mature enough to own a gun. Now, the gun is actually guaranteed under the Constitution, but we'll deny them that right, not at 18 like it used to be. Now it's 21 in a lot of states, and the Democrats want to make it 21 nationwide, but they want those same people to vote.
It's a beautiful thing.
And they want to stack
It's a
the
beautiful
Supreme
thing
Court.
how John reads an article and sees that one Democrat somewhere advocated something.
You've got
all
you've got
Democrats
multiple
are for it.
states that have already changed it. Democrat states, Franklin, and you've got
Some
presidential
Republicans are, too.
candidates. You've got presidential candidates that are running on
What
that
about the
platform
speaker?
in your party.
Speakers. What's her name? Pelosi?
Yes.
That's not it's her idea.
Well, look, they want to stack the Supreme Court.
It's
They want
her
to
idea.
add, because they've lost a presidential election, and it's had bad consequences for Supreme Court nominees, according to them. Now, they didn't have a problem when Obama was in. No one said anything about stacking the Supreme Court when Obama was nominating people, and Republicans didn't say it. But when they lose, they want to cheat. They want to change the system.
Be quiet just a minute, John. Let me get him to answer a question too. Why do you think the future of the Democratic Party is going to be with this 16-year-old?
Illegal aliens, don't forget that.
16-year-olds. They're pushing 16-year-olds. They're pushing Supreme Court justices.
I don't think either of those things is going to happen.
Okay.
Did you?
They're making
4
it
years
talking
ago.
points,
Did
though.
you think men would be using the women's bathroom?
Yeah, John. Sure.
Frankly, ask anybody on the street.
Okay.
4 years ago, if you had told them that men would be using the women's bathroom, they'd say, "Well,
4
that's
years
ridiculous.
ago, I didn't
That's
think
not
a
gonna-"
president
But
could
guess
brag
what?
about sexual
But
assault.
all
and
of
elected
that
either.
was your party. No, he
And
would
that's your party.
No, he
So
would
what's
just
your point?
a president would
Mr.
just
Morality?
rape people, lie about it. in
Mr.
federal
Morality
court,
over
and
here.
then be let go.
Did you think
And
you'd
you're
ever
a
see that?
A fundraiser for your party for decades.
Did you ever think you'd see that, Mr. Morality over here?
I've been
Gracious.
trying to hold y'all
My
back
God.
all day.
When you all allowed a rapist president to lie under oath,
you'd see a
I was
president who could go on TV and criticize POWs and Gold Star families and get elected? Never thought I'd see that.
He's good, isn't he?
Oh, my God.
Hey, is he good? Is Trump good or not?
It's a creation of you all's culture.
John, don't you have
He's a
you have time
creation
to
of
talk
your
about
culture.
this without reading the president's 58 tweets this week?
The President Trump is a creation of the liberal culture. You all wanted to tear down
So
all
you've
kinds of
now, wait,
laws,
let me get
all
this
kinds
straight.
of rules.
You've now embraced the liberal culture.
No, I haven't. I don't like it. I don't like his personality. I don't like the vulgarity. I don't like any of it. But it's your people and your movement that tore all of the moral.
Hey, John, do you like what Trump's doing?
I like what he's doing.
Okay. Do you like what Trump's doing?
No.
What do you dislike about what Trump's doing?
I think he's destroying all the alliances around the country that have given us prosperity and security over the last 50 years. I think
Iran?
he's
Are you talking about Iran?
Yeah.
Iran hasn't attacked us.
Oh, my God.
If you'll remember, all the 9/11 attackers were from Saudi Arabia. Remember that? Or did y'all forget that while Trump was giving them all kinds of cash?
No, Franklin, I didn't.
I mean, come on,
I
you
didn't-
ever just stop and use
I
your
didn't
brain?
forget that either when President Clinton had Osama bin Laden in custody and decided to let him go.
Criticize him for
he
that.
had done the first bombing.
Fine, criticize him for that. Although that was a misstatement too. But
It's not a
That
misstatement,
was a
Franklin.
misstatement.
Another foreign country had him in custody, offered him to us. He also had two opportunities where they had him located and ready to
That part
kill,
is true.
and he refused to have him
That part
killed.
is true.
And he had already taken credit for the first Trade Center bombing.
that part is true.
One last question. We've got to go. The day has already come by us. What's going on with the Mueller investigation right now? What do you think? They got some of the people on the team moving out. They're no longer. They're getting off the investigation. So what do you think this investigation is?
Well, I would say that the Mueller portion of it is winding down and will probably be reported to Congress pretty
Why do you
soon.
say the Mueller portion? I thought the Mueller was going to be the end-all, be-all.
Yeah, I thought the Mueller was the investigation.
Well, because we already know that some of the things they came across were referred out to other United
Are
States
any of them
attorneys.
collusion?
I don't know.
No.
We don't know.
No.
But I know this. The president seems to be awfully worried about it.
You
Since
mean that's why he told all of the
all
Congress? That's why he told all Republicans to go ahead and vote to have the entire report released?
50.
Did he?
And what did his lackey number one do immediately after that?
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Lindsey Graham blocked the
Lackey.
vote.
So now Lindsey Graham is a lackey.
Yeah, apparently so.
The vote in the Congress was 420 to nothing. 420 to nothing.
In which branch?
In the House.
Okay, what happened in the Senate?
I don't know. I didn't
Graham blocked the vote. No vote at all because of Lindsey Graham.
No vote for what?
The president said he wants it released, but his number one ally in the Senate right now blocked the vote. So you tell me what.
What was the vote on, Franklin?
Whether to release it.
No, it wasn't on.
To release it fully.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't on any of that. You know what it was, Franklin? And this is the American public out there should know this when they get ready to vote again. The Democrats spent a week on a resolution that simply restates what the law says William Barr can do. That's all. It doesn't call on it to be released. It says he may release it. No, it didn't, Franklin. All it did was restate what the law actually says. So the Democrat Party, instead of fixing anything for the people, spent a week. I don't know why Lindsey did that.
Because he's Trump's lackey now.
No. Lindsey Graham.
That backstabber who turned his back on the best friend he ever had and allowed the president to slander him isn't worth spitting on.
He got over it, Franklin.
Folks, listen to
Unlike
that.
you.
Listen to what Franklin just said. I mean, that's the way
No,
the Democrats
that's what
look
you've
at
done.
That's the
You've
way the
embraced
Democrats
people
look at the
who
rest
have
of us.
no morality
Really,
whatsoever.
Franklin, you've got open anti-Semites in your party who are being actually defended. Matter of fact, Tlaib actually said that what Chelsea Clinton said, she needed to, quote, be careful.
Franklin, I think y'all need to be careful on the Democratic side. What y'all are talking about is un-American right now. It's un-American.
It's un-American to support somebody who talks about war heroes and dead soldiers like they're garbage.
A war hero.
Yeah.
A war hero is what? A person that got kidnapped.
First of all, it's people who had the courage to get there.
Look, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I criticized him saying that about John McCain. But what did we find out this week about the Steele dossier and John McCain? What did we find out?
What we already knew.
We found out that McCain was the source after they denied it.
Actually, that's not what we found out.
A McCain advisor who is technically not employed anymore.
What the president said was he gave it to him before the election, and that's a lie. And you know it. He gave it to him after the election.
Look, Franklin, I'll call both sides wrong when they're wrong. John McCain's office and John McCain's people basically skirted that issue and lied about it. They gave it to the press.
You tell me what McCain did wrong in turning it over to the FBI. What was wrong about that?
He turned it over to the press too, Franklin. And by the way, the FBI already had it. And by the way, we also know that Loretta Lynch.
So that means that the president himself, in his tweets this week, outright lied.
We also know that Loretta Lynch
lied. You know why we got a
when
Russian
she said,
investigation? Because the president lied.
No, we got a Russian investigation because you people are sore losers.
He can't talk about it without lying.
Sore losers.
Franklin, it's obvious what's going on in the Democratic Party.
Yes, it is obvious that your party is about to have another election where they get
I can't wait till the next election.
Another lower percentage of the vote.
All right, we've got to go. I hate to end it right now, but we've got another show coming on here.
We do?
Yeah.
There are other shows on this station?
That's right.
Why?
Hey.
Why?
Hey.
Remember when headline news?
All you liberals.
We have enough backlog of shows to just run our shows all day, every day.
To all you liberals out there, goodbye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30.